guys, welcome back to the channel. I'm Bean and here to do my recent reads. Now these reads will go all the way up until basically the end of September. I will not be including anything that I read in October, mostly due to the fact that I haven't finished anything yet, but also because we are doing our readathon right now, so I will have that in a completely separate video later on in the month. So be on the lookout for that later. This time I did manage to read 13 books again. So apparently that's like my sweet spot right now, is 13 books a month. And about half of these or so I did listen to on audiobook. Several of them I do not own physical copies of. However, I will be showing you the ones that I do have. Starting off, I'm going to talk about Fangirl by Rainbow Rowell. We did talk about this in a previous video because it was our big book of the month for August. Yeah, I'm a little bit behind. Usually am. I gave this book a 3 out of 5. Didn't particularly enjoy it. Didn't particularly hate it. It was just kind of there for me, and I was kind of disappointed with it, in all honesty. So yep, if you want to see my full thoughts on that book, I will link that video down below. The next book that I read was Death on the Nile, Hercule Poirot number 17 by Agatha Christie. Now, this one I did give 5 stars to. I think this might be one of my new favorite books in the series. It takes place on a barge. Poirot is heading down towards Egypt, and one of the passengers on the barge is killed, and he has to figure out who murdered them and before they land down in Cairo. So I thought this was a great story. I really am finding myself enjoying this process of reading the Agatha Christie books. Each time I read a new one, I am amazed by her ability to create new characters and to not have an overused plot. I have now, as of the end of this month, I have read 19 books in this series, and none of them have been the same, which I feel like says a lot about her writing. So I can only highly recommend this series to everybody. She is always able to create these characters that I can visually see in my mind, and unless they are unimportant to the story, she develops them fully, each and every single one of them. The next book that I read was The Spellman Files by Lisa Lutz. This is the first book in the Spellmans series, and this is a book that has been out for quite a while, but I've just recently gotten into. Lisa Lutz wrote The Swallows, I believe, is what just came out this year. So I wanted to get into some more of her writing. This story follows Izzy Spellman, who is the oldest daughter of the Spellman family, the middle child, and she is 28 in this book, and her entire family is made up of PIs. So everyone's a private investigator, and nothing is safe in this family. Nothing is sacred. You can't have secrets. You can't hide anything from anyone. This story follows Izzy as she tries to get away from that lifestyle. She doesn't want to be a PI anymore, but her family is determined to keep her in the family business. In order for her to quit, they did agree to have her solve a cold case that has been cold for 15 years, and if she can solve this cold case, they'll let her leave the family business. It was a very interesting ride. I thought the humor of this book was amazing, and I really liked Izzy as our main character. She's not a likable character. She's interested in keeping herself safe and keeping herself clean. She does help out her friends, and she does try and set a good example for her younger sister once she realizes how much her sister is copying her. I highly recommend this book if you want some humor in your life, but also it's not afraid to take some risks. Moving on to my first reread of the month, I reread Stalking Jack the Ripper by Kerri Maniscalco, and surprise, I gave this book 5 stars. I absolutely love Stalking Jack the Ripper. Kerri Maniscalco's writing in this story is absolutely amazing. And I love Audrey Rose, who is the main character in the story. She wants to become a mortician and ends up getting dragged into the mystery of Jack the Ripper. So this book does take place during the Victorian age in England and follows Audrey Rose and her friend Thomas Cresswell as they try to figure out who is Jack the Ripper after her uncle gets blamed for it. So this was a great book, a great start to a series, and really had me wanting to read more about our characters. Moving on, the next book that I read was Zero Sum Game by S.L. Huang. This is the first book in a series, which I will not be continuing with. This book follows Kaz, who is a girl who has a special gift with math, as in she is brilliantly good at math. And it kind of goes with the whole superhero idea where everyone has their unique gifts, but that's not really introduced in the story until the end. And there's a corporation that's trying to take over. I just really had a hard time getting into this story. But I will say Kaz's superpower, if you want to call it that, was kind of cool because she was able to calculate different angles and distances and how hard she needed to hit someone in order to break their nose and stuff kind of like that, which I did find to be kind of cool, but the plot just wasn't there for me. And then moving on, I read Hunting Prince Dracula by Kerri Maniscalco. I did have plans to binge the entire series this month, and then life kind of got in the way. But this book, I ended up giving this one a 4 out of 5, and I think as I keep thinking about it, it's probably going to end up being closer to a 3.5 out of 5, just because I was really underwhelmed by this one. This book turned more into a romance than I was hoping for this series to be. I got into this series for stabby stab times, and this was not a stabby stab book, really, unfortunately. The sexual tension between our two main characters in this book was so palpable and just needed to be taken care of so that way we could move on. And I do think I forget every so often that Audrey Rose is 17 in this series. She's not 18 yet. She's going around. She's now going to this follows them as they go to Bran Castle in Romania in order to study the mortuary sciences. Literally, they're going to school to become morticians. And she's the only girl there, and there's a whole bunch of issues with that. However, I don't really like how it was portrayed. I don't know, this book didn't vibe with me very well, and I have heard through the rumor mill that this is not the favorite book in the series, but I have also heard that the rest of the series is all romance, and I'm not looking for that. I want the stabby stab books, so leave me your thoughts down below if you think that there's more stabby stab coming up, because I'm looking for the stabby stabs. Thanks. As a disclaimer, the next 3 books I did not read in order. I actually read them in the order of, I believe it was 3, 5, and then 2. I do own number 2, which is The Chase by Janet Evanovitch and Lee Goldberg. And this series, if no one has read these and you haven't heard me talk about them, what the heck, dude? I've been reading them off and on all the time, constantly. This follows the pair, Kate O'Hare, who is an FBI agent with a clean, spotless record, and Nicholas Fox, who is a world-class con man. After she catches him during one of his robberies, they are forced to work together in order to bring down some very big players throughout the world in the crime syndicates. And so these books follow them as they go around. Basically, they're cons that they pull on people in order to get certain people arrested and to get the really bad guys out of the world. And it's just a feel-good story. There is sexual tension. There's all these fun characters, and I just highly recommend this series. It's great. If you can, listen to the audiobooks, because I really like the audiobook. Moving on, the next book I picked up was the next book in the Hercule Poirot series, and that was Murder in the Mews, which is the 18th book in the series. Now, this one was 3 short stories all together, and I gave it a 4 out of 5. They were great, they were interesting, but nothing to write home about, I guess, so nothing too special for me. Very short stories, and he solves mysteries. Next, I kind of jumped into the deep end as far as some fantasy goes, and I read The Library at Mount Char by Scott Hawkins. This is a bit of a dystopian story. It follows a girl named Carolyn who is brought up by a foster father who they call Father with a capital F, and he basically is a god, from my understanding. This book took me quite a while to get into. There are trigger warnings up the wazoo. I'm just gonna read them off here for you. We've got animal violence, extreme human violence, including torture and death, brainwashing, sexual content, rape, abuse, and death, if that's a trigger for you as well. I think one of the hardest things about this book, other than reading about many of these different triggers, is that it's not written in chronological order for the first probably 2/3 of it. You get some flashbacks as to what happened before some of these kids came to live with father, and their childhood and what they went through, and how they trained with animals in order to become who they are. And it got very mixed up kind of in my head at times. Our main character, who is Carolyn, is not what I would call a reliable narrator. She narrates the story, but you aren't sure about her motivations until you get closer to the end, and then you realize why she's doing what she's doing. And it gets pretty twisted at points. So that saying, this book I did partially pick up because I really love the cover, but I do recommend this book overall. I ended up giving this one 3.5 out of 5. I did enjoy it, and I will probably pick up something else by Scott Hawkins. The next book I read after that chunky book was Appointment with Death by Agatha Christie. This is book number 19 in the Hercule Poirot series. Yeah, I got through 3 of them this month, so I was pretty proud of myself. But this one is another one that I really enjoyed. I gave this one a 5 out of 5. This book follows a family called the Boyntons, who have basically a very tyrannical mother who doesn't let the kids go out and meet anyone, doesn't let them leave the house without her explicit permission or without her. And she has decided to take them all on a trip, which is very out of character of her. And then one day, everyone goes for a walk, and they come back, and she's dead. The interesting thing about this story is that I was okay with her being dead. I really didn't like her, and if you did, there's something wrong, because she was not a good character. With her death, her kids are allowed to have their own lives. However, first, Poirot has to discover who it is that killed her. And I think this was a great one by Agatha Christie, because it still shows that even though Poirot didn't mind that she died, he still stands for justice, and he still is like, he has to know who killed her, because this is important. You can't let a murderer go free. And I was definitely very invested in the story of these characters, which was really fun to see, especially since lots of these characters didn't have much of a personality because they weren't allowed to have one without their mother's permission. So it was definitely a different way of looking at murder, for me at least. And the last book that I am going to talk about in this recent reads is 29 Seconds by T.M. Logan. I did receive this as an ARC, and I did finally read it as well. This book follows Sarah, who is a temporary teaching assistant at a college, and it follows her as she deals with unwanted sexual advances from her superior, who basically has, in a sense, taken over this university. And if you're not on his good side, he will make your life a living hell and will ensure that you never get another job if you don't give him what he wants. And he has set his gaze on Sarah now. So one day, Sarah gets some pretty bad news at work and is on her way. She is driving home when she witnesses and prevents the kidnapping of a small girl. And it turns out that this girl is the daughter of a very powerful businessman who makes her a deal. Now, this deal is that she can give him one name of one person that she wants to disappear. And so the 29 seconds is because she makes a 29-second phone call that determines her future. This book has very good rep for many different things. She is basically a single mom who has 2 kids. The dad is still around, but he's not in the picture really at all in this story. He goes out to find himself, and she's never sure when he's going to come back. But she is a woman making her way in the world, just attempting to pay her bills. This book does have trigger warnings for assault, rape, abuse, and unfaithfulness as well. So this book was pretty intense, and I definitely needed something very lighthearted to read after this. It was well written, it was gripping, I really got sucked into this story, and I highly recommend it. Overall, I gave this a 4 out of 5. So those are all the books that I am going to talk about in this current recent reads. As to what I am reading right now, I have moved on to Holo Kingdom by Kira Jane Baxton, and I am not too far into this one, but I am enjoying it so far. I'm just reading like a chapter or two before bed, but it is definitely the light-hearted, humorous, post-apocalyptic book that I needed after the intense books I read last month. If you enjoyed this video, right now is the perfect time to like and subscribe. We publish videos every Tuesday, Thursday, and Sunday, and we would love to talk to you guys further in the comments, so feel free to subscribe. We have all of our Instagram and Goodreads handles down in the description below, so feel free to check us out there. We spend a lot of time on those platforms, and currently we are actually working our way through our fall-time readathon, so if you want to see our intro video along with our TBRs, I will also link those down below, and I will see you guys in the next video. Bye!